I want to talk all about building your own framework. And this is something which sounds a little bit vague. It's something which you probably have never thought of, is building out your own sort of way of presenting what you do in a way that allows others to do the same. And that's all I can think of as framework is something that you do in the everyday that's very normal for you, but becomes something that you can replicate into other people by teaching it to them, by packaging it together, putting it in a book, putting it into an online guide, perhaps even creating a whole trademarked system that's just your own. I've got one I've built myself, haven't trademarked it or anything because it's still very much being built over the last few years, but it's a framework that I use again and again and again, that I've cobbled together from pieces of other people's ideas and then a few of my own. And it's come up with this unique approach, and it's all to do with content creation. So it's one of those things where, it may be useful to other people, but I've literally taught it to so many people that I've lost count. So it's something which I possibly can look at as a framework for myself. This is that one thing that makes you impossible to replace too. And that's really the whole point of this, is in a world of so much AI stuff, your way of doing things is one of the few things that sets you apart, because you're up against that machine that never sleeps. It works for free. Anyone can ask it questions. So your knowledge on its own, so, oh yes, my industry experience, my industry knowledge just isn't enough. It's not what we call a moat. It doesn't protect you from the power of AI tools and their ability to pattern match and find all the similarities, and to be able to bring up pretty much all those same insights you would have in the industry, it will have too. So what is then left is not so much the knowledge itself, but the way that you do what you do. And there's always going to be a slight difference in the way you do things to the way that everyone else does things. And that's where the gold is. So this is where we decide we're going to own a method. We're not going to yell louder into the void. We're not going to spend more on meta ads. We're going to own our own method, or build a framework. And this can be the tactics you use. It can be a process you follow. We've all got these tactics. AI has tactics as well. But a named system or a named framework or a named method that you've given a name to, you have your way of doing it. Now, it may not be completely and utterly unique to the way that everyone does it. It may be just a redoing of the way someone else does it. But I look at that in things like, the SWOT analysis and disc profiling. There's nothing unique about any of them. Disc profiling comes from about 1928. And then people have reworked it and rejigged it and reorganized it and refactored it into something that suits them. It doesn't mean it's new, but it also doesn't mean that it's not new. Another group has disc profiling with a little I in disc, and they've trademarked that as their own system. But this is what still works in 2026, right? So when we go, oh yes, my knowledge, my experience is everything that is unique about me. Well, then if that's not unique and AI can do any of that, then a named method that you own. So for instance, we look at people like authors, and she might be problematic at the moment, is Mel Robbins with the let them theory, which is basically just Zen Buddhism at its core. But it's a thing that she's attached. It's the 4-hour work week that Tim Ferriss came up with. It's the whatever, like, look at any YouTuber, look at any guru who's written a book, anyone who's been a productivity expert, they've all got their method or their framework. So this is the thing that you get that's a little bit different. Only you do it your way and can explain it in your way. Now, a framework, then, you've got a method, you've got tools and tactics and all that. Your framework is actually the way you do what you do, written down, given a name, and it's something that people can follow, so they don't need to have special knowledge or special ways of thinking. They can just follow the routine that you set, and they can remember what it is because it's simple and it has a name. So there's things like, the 5-second rule from Mel Robbins, Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps of money, the KonMari method of Marie Kondo with organizing and finding joy and throwing out things that do not, David Allen with getting things done. There's always these frameworks that come across. And when you think about it, you've probably read a dozen books that have a framework in it when you're looking for ways to do things better in your business or way to do things better in your startup or even in your career. So this framework thing then becomes something that is really uniquely yours. You've named it, you've promoted it, you've put it out there. And now the one thing to be aware of is sometimes your framework will look a lot like someone else's framework, and that's fine. You just add your special, sprinkle of fairy dust to it, and there'd be something in there that's slightly different that you do that other people don't. You already have a framework, and this is something which is really interesting to as a revelation, is that you probably already have several frameworks, but you just can't see them yet because you're in the middle of working through those frameworks. You've done this thing so many times. And so the steps have kind of, fused into this attitude of, oh, I just know what to do, or I'm just good at what I do, or I've just conquered the ability to do that. It doesn't just magically appear. It is a system. It's a system you use, whether it's your morning routine. And I have a morning routine, go through almost religiously every morning. I have a night routine I go through almost religiously. Are they a framework? Well, possibly, because I've never heard anyone talk about my particular nighttime routine and how it works for me to help me to sleep and get better sleep and be more energetic the next day and get more work done. So I look at that and go, well, maybe I could sell a book that's about my nighttime routine. But I have to warn you, it involves a lot of Star Trek, and that's where I'll leave it. So that's a system. You might have a system in getting your reconciliations done in your bank accounts. You'll have a system, and my friend Barbara Clifford in Alice Springs has a world of systems when it comes to productivity and time management. She was referred to for many years as the time tamer because she had systems that so successfully helped her to manage time that she then went on to sell those systems to other people as well. So you already have a system. You've probably got several. I've got one that I can think of off the top of my head, but there are several systems I have that help me get through life, build businesses, sell businesses, buy businesses, grow new businesses, come up with ideas, save time, use AI, use social media. Every one of those things has got some kind of framework that I've built around it. And this matters because when you build your system and your framework out, you become the expert in that. So you don't have to go, oh, well, Justin Welsh is the expert at writing on LinkedIn, and Gary Vaynerchuk is the expert at this. And when it comes to vulnerability and being able to share your truth and deal with shame, Brene Brown is the expert in that. You have your way of doing these things, whether it's overcoming shame, overcoming generational trauma, moving out from toxic environments, or whether it's something technical, how to do this coding, how to do this website build. Those things become your system and you become the expert. Nobody can out Gary V. He is the expert in what he does, although you would be hard pressed to say he's necessarily an expert in anything except for what it is that he has done. So the moment that your method has your name on it, you're then not competing against everybody else who does what you do. So for instance, when I do my 2, 3, 4, 5 method, which is to do with social media content, I'm not competing against every other person who's got a social media calendar. I'm sitting out in a blue sky of my own where nobody has heard of this particular thing before. And when I come to them with it, it seems remarkably simple, remarkably achievable. And they go, wow, I think I can do this. You then get to compete in the big pool of all that on your own term and not theirs. You're selling your particular one. A friend of mine, AJ Kalatonga, he does the same thing as well. He very much does comes up with these ideas and frameworks around innovation and around success and execution of ideas, and he brings them to a stage as a speaker. But he also has frameworks that he's built out that he works with teams to be able to do. There are his own frameworks that he has worked out, but I'm sure, like everyone, it's been inspired by other frameworks that have worked for other people as well. One of the big reasons why you want your own framework is that you get to charge a bit more. You get to have a bit of a premium product. And Aussie trademark filings were really high last year, up 13.3%, because now we're just trademarking everything we come up with. So the method becomes the intellectual property that we now own, which means you've got an asset in there that you can build and you can protect. It's not a generic service saying, here, build a content calendar. It's a named method, the 2, 3, 4, 5 method. And that becomes something which is inevitably associated only with you. You become the owner of that. You become the person who came up with that. You become the expert. And let's just say, maybe you even become a little bit of a YouTube guru because you're able to explain that to people in ways that others. And there's also a reason too that this becomes important, is because this is the stuff that gets you onto podcasts. So I'm just about to get called onto a podcast by someone who I deal with quite frequently on LinkedIn, and they have wanted me to talk about my methods, my particular frameworks that I use to do the things that I do. It also gives you endless context. It works without you. And it can start with, for instance, you could write a book about it. You could create long form YouTube videos, blogs. You can create interactive online guides. And these days, all the AI tools can do that for you. Every step is a piece of content. So if you've got 7 steps, that's 7, 7 steps, then each one of that's 7 pieces of content. And then you can look at that in 5 different perspectives, and that's 35 pieces of content. If you apply it to lots of different kinds of people, that then becomes endless amounts of content, and you don't need to keep coming up with new ideas all the time. A post, a workshop, a story, everything is built in there. It can be a series of webinars. It can be a series of podcast episodes. It can be a series of YouTube videos that all gets created around your specific framework. And clients then spread that around for you, because if it's a framework that makes sense to people, that's simple, but also effective, but then on top of that is very easy to remember the name of it and how it works, people start talking about it. So it works when you're not working on it. The system starts to sell for itself, and it delivers not just online, but in person as well. The lie about being unique is that, you need to be absolutely unique, absolutely original. You need to be the one who named it. Look, Dave Ramsey didn't invent paying off debt. He named it and packaged it into his process. Marie Kondo didn't invent folding t-shirts and throwing out junk. She made it into a method. So there's nothing unique about what either of them have done. I look at all the people that I watch constantly on YouTube, none of them are unique. What they have is a method or a set of methods that they use. And that's what makes them appear to be unique. But what they're really doing is just repackaging, renaming, and repurposing the things they've learned. My 2, 3, 4, 5 method is a combination of 3 different people's methods that I went, wait a minute, those 3 methods working together could create something really simple. And it did, and that became my method. Have I trademarked it? No. Do I want to trademark it? Yeah, not particularly. I don't feel the need to do that. But what we do want to do is make sure that we've got this ability to be able to name that process, what we're going to call it. So the first step is you have to identify what is going to change for the person who's going to use your framework. So the idea is here to sell the vacation, not the flight. The flight is a way of getting to the vacation. You don't sell that, you sell the vacation itself. What does the person have at the end of your process, or at the end of your transformation, or the end of your framework? So something could be send better emails is a bit weak, but a full client roster is something which is quite strong. I could say do better social media, or I could say social media that makes sense for the clients that you want to attract. And that way you've got a very specific thing that is associated with that method or framework that you're going to be putting together. Second, you break it into steps, 3 to 5. You don't want 7 and you don't want 21 steps. It's just too much for people to get their heads around. The more steps there are, the more people think it's going to be hard and they're never going to be able to grasp it. So keep it 3 to 5, no more. I've got the 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's like 4 kind of parts of it. So it's a 4-step process. Often on websites, I break things into 3 steps of how you can work with me. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. So map them out, trim them down to no more than 5. I know that, gosh, we think that what we do is so complicated and so complex. We must stretch it out. No, I need all 19 of those steps. No, trim it down, bundle them together if you need to. There's things, we're not talking about all the individual bits that you do within each step. It's kind of like, this is move number 1, which contains 5 tasks, right? So it's not 5 steps, it's 5 tasks within the first step. Right? Think about it like that. And think about it too, is this something that you could explain to a stranger in the street and they would be able to pick it up and start working with it today, knowing absolutely nothing else about you? They could go, I understand that. That makes sense. If that is yes, you've got it right. You've got something which is a framework that you can then spread through to other people as well. Now we're going to name it, right? So the really easy way to do it is to put numbers in there, the 3-step, the 4-step, the something. Mine's the 2, 3, 4, 5 method. Or maybe give it a brand name. You could call it the what do McDonald's call their burger making method, the Speedy system, back in the 1950s or whatever it was. Or an acronym, the ADHD overcomers method, or it could be something that sticks, something that's really easy to say. If it's a real word as well, that can be helpful, but don't sort of torture the letters into something we call a retronym, where you're trying to, I want it to be the start method, and I'm going to like sort of squeeze words in there that don't quite sound right, that spell out START. Don't try to be too clever. You want to be easily remembered, not thought of as clever. It's like, oh, that's a clever combination of letters. I wonder how you came up with that. Well, you tortured those words into being part of that acronym. So numbers, brand names, acronyms all work. Just try to be simple with it. You want it to be memorable, not remembered as just being clever, but a little too vague for people to understand. And then you get to own that, but you also get to give it away. And this is the thing that people can't get their heads around very easily, is that your method is going to be given away freely. Let people understand it in the best way they can possibly do, and apply it in the best way they can possibly do, and probably get it wrong. And then they'll come back to you for some depth. So for instance, someone could, and pretty much no one makes money out of books anymore except for publishers and bookstores, right? So you could make a book and treat that book as like a big introduction to people about your method. They are going to read a third of that book, get sick of it, put it down, never really read it again. But they may start the process of the framework that you've got in there, and they kind of get stuck, and then they need some help. And then they'll come back to your website and go, I wonder if she does coaching. Oh, I wonder if she's got any classes. And then they'll start looking for that depth. And that's where you start charging. So the book is really something you're almost giving away, because you are going to make almost nothing out of that book. That said, though, you could avoid the book thing altogether, put it on websites and social media and openly promote it that way. What you do, you're giving away what the method is, understanding that people, I want to say they're lazy. I just want to say that they are not likely to do all the things that are required for it. What they're likely to do is get started, think it's too hard, and then look for someone to either do it for them or to help them to do it better because they can't seem to get it together themselves. The framework's just a hook to drag people in. The depth is in the extra services that you can provide on the side, whether it's coaching, a community, group classes, that kind of thing. The book and the framework on its own is not the product. It's just a hook. Hard to imagine that, right? So the hard bit is you got to stay on the path and don't be tempted to branch it out and to grow it out and make it more complicated. You need to become a generalist in just 5 things, really. The fastest way to stop being the expert is where you start to go and become that generalist in 5 things. You want to be the expert in this one specific thing. In 5 years' time, when everyone understands your method, then you can start to go, here's my second method. Here's my extended method. Systems are everything for you. So pick that lane so that people can understand it and work with it, and you own that system completely, rather than going, oh, I've given this 3 months and no one's really hooking onto it. I need to move on to something else. I'll do another method. And what you become is, nobody knows what you really stand for, because you're standing for too many things at the moment, which has been the story of my social media for most of my career, is that no one really understood what I did until I started to narrow down what it was I talked about. So what to do this week to get this started is grab yourself a blank piece of paper and write the steps you go through in certain things that you do within the work you do. So look at the processes you go for, and then cut that process down to 5 or 3 if you can, but be brutal. If it doesn't do a transformation at that step, you need to cut it down. Then write what the transformation is in just 1 sentence. That helps you then to form your name and sit with those names until one makes you kind of giggle a little bit because you think it's really cool and really simple. And that's kind of the one that you're going to end up going with. So that's pretty easy sort of steps. Because this is a webinar, and because nobody really goes from a webinar and instantly goes and does everything, I make these online interactive guides. And I've got one here for you. You can continue that learning, all that stuff we just talked about, including some case studies, some ideas, some quizzes, some bits and pieces that help you to get that whole framing of what a framework is together at that address you see right now on the screen, or via the QR code where you can save it on your mobile and go back for it later. This will do far more than any webinar can. It's almost like the webinar is the hook. This is the product, but this one's free. I'm not charging you for any of this. Not all my ideas, some of my ideas, some of my observations, but certainly some universal truths in there about building a framework or a method that is uniquely yours so that you can produce a product that is 100% you, 100% differentiated from what anyone else is doing, so that you can then become the hero in the room. Well, you don't want to be that all day, just maybe let's say the expert in the room. That might be a bit better.